Welcome to Impolite MTG,
where we're going to talk about Magic the Gathering.
and we're not always going to be nice about it.
I'm Chris, Archmage Eternal.
Hey, I'm Dave, Guru of S'mores.
So a friend of mine a few weeks ago brought up an interesting topic to discuss here.
Wasn't M building 50 million decks like usual?
No, actually it was Power Stone.
Damn, that was weird.
Huh, yeah, that's never happened before. Yeah, so Power Stone.
God damn it happened again. Stop saying Power Stone's name. Motherfucker!
Yeah, that was really weird. Anyways, he suggested we discuss when to introduce new players to resource denial.
Yeah, that sounds like an interesting topic, and it's very different than anything else we've ever covered.
Yeah, I've never done it before, but I should start off by saying I want to make it clear that most of these are well accepted in Commander and other formats, and often are brought to a new player's attention very early on. Spells like Murder, Demystify, and Shatter destroy creatures, enchantments, and artifacts, respectively. They are constantly being reprinted into new sets, and are widely accepted by old and new players alike. Let me get into the feel-bad effects. Counter spells, discard, land destruction, and even mill, which ironically is often a new player's first look into alternate win condition. They're all just really feel-bad cards for old and new players alike. So Dave, what do you think?
Well, I think it really depends on the type of card, and it also depends on the format that you're playing in. New players oftentimes they come into Magic either through like a friend playing with them casually, they end up at a pre-release, or the most common way I've seen new players get into Magic nowadays is Commander. And each format has a different variance in what a player has to see day one. So I think that's something we should actually jump into and start discussing.
Yeah, so as far as day one goes, I think we should discuss single target removal, which we have 3 types of, board wipes, counter spells, and discard.
So first we have single target removal. This is the stuff that every player is going to see in every format because it's baked into the operating system of Magic.
Yeah.
No matter what flavor it comes in, it's something they're going to see pretty much right away. So I think it's something to introduce to Magic players from the outset. And you should set the standard that Magic is more like a sword fight. There's thrust and parry, call and response, threat, answer.
Yes.
They need to know that you could play a spell, and if somebody has 2 blue mana open, they can counter your spell so you don't get your spell. They need to know that if they play a creature and it has an effect that a player doesn't like, a player could tap some black mana and destroy it. Or they can tap some white mana and exile it. Or they can, tap a lot of red mana and burn it out of existence.
Yeah, exactly. And like with bounce effects, we kind of get this weird situation where it's what I would call soft removal. It just kind of happens. The creature comes back next turn and doesn't really impact. Except what a lot of new players don't understand is this is a tempo swing.
Yeah.
You spent 6 mana on that big creature trampling in at me, and I cast 2 mana to bounce it back to your hand. I don't have to deal with that creature anymore, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah, and that could be the difference between winning or losing. So, yeah, there's definitely some nuance to this stuff. But, day one, it's just like, okay, here's what you have to deal with. Here's what you should know what to do if somebody is playing a big, nasty creature or something that you can't deal with. Here's how you deal with it as well. Because not only is introducing them to resource denial, showing them, hey, this is stuff you can come up against and you might feel bad about it, but it also has the adverse effect of showing them how to do it themselves.
You know what has very little nuance?
What?
Board wipes. They don't give no fucks.
Yeah. Board wipe don't give no fuck about your creatures. They dead.
Yeah, I mean, we have damage board wipes in red. We have -1, -1, -X effects in black. We have literally just destroy effects.
Exile effects.
Yeah.
Yeah, board wipes are something that, okay, if a player is playing more casual Magic, it's not going to come up day one. Different formats have their varying levels of board wipes, but again, this is one of those things where if you're playing Commander, this is something they need to know right away because more often than not, a game of Commander features a board wipe at some point. I got in one game of Magic today with my brand new Reaper King deck, and there was 3 different board wipes.
It's very rare for a game not to have a board wipe in it, and
Exactly.
You know what's really funny? 10 episodes in, we haven't mentioned Cyclonic Rift once, and this is one of the format's like premier board wipes.
Trust me, I do all the editing. I know.
And this is the thing, like there's a reason why it's a premier board wipe in Commander. It sees very little play outside of it, but the tempo swing it offers, huge.
Yeah, when you can tempo every other player at the table and not affect yourself, that can be backbreaking. The nice thing about Cyclonic Rift is it can be played reactively, like, oh, you're going to kill me, Cyclonic Rift. Or it could be like, hey, I've got a bunch of shit and I can kill you, Cyclonic Rift. Now you're going to die.
Yeah.
It can be played offensively and defensively, whereas not a lot of board wipes can actually do that. It's the one board wipe that has a little bit of nuance to it. One type of removal that players really don't like is discard. And it's important to introduce that to new players pretty much day one, or at least within the first several games, because they are going to come across it, especially in like limited formats.
Yeah, this is actually kind of what Power Stone mentioned when he wanted us to do this topic, because this and counter spells as well as mill are the big three like feel bad removal options.
Exactly, and I think that's mainly why he was interested in this video, and why I was interested in this video.
And why I decided to like force Dave to do this video.
I know, it's so brutal. This topic is so hard to cover. Oh, it's going to be so much editing.
It's a good thing Canadians don't have a lot of guns, because...
Shotgun YouTube video editing?
Damn right, yeah.
Oh, good God.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, there's the feel bads with these type of effects, and that's mainly why you want to introduce new players to this stuff fairly early on, so that you can kind of get those growing pains out of the way quickly, and they can be a more well-adjusted Magic player. I think it would really suck to be like a fairly new Magic player, and then all of a sudden you sit down against like a deck that just completely picks you apart.
Tergrid.
In a way that you've never, ever encountered before. Tergrid.
Yeah.
That fucking cunt.
Oh, jeez.
And I say that as somebody who has a Tergrid deck.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing about discard. It comes in multiple forms. There's a lot of payoffs in the format right now, and it creates really big feel bads. If you introduce a new player to the idea of discard like day one, those feel bads aren't as bad.
Exactly. And that's the whole point. Like, show the players that, okay, yes, this can happen to you, but here's how you deal with it. And so if a player is encountering a lot of discard in their personal play group, if they're playing Commander, or even just casual 60-card constructed, oh, this guy likes to play a lot of discard and stuff, it just completely wrecked my hand. I'm like, all right, I would tell you, you want to screw that guy over? Play a Reanimator deck. Play a Graveyard deck. Where it's like, oh, you threw all my stuff in the graveyard? Oh, no.
Even simpler, like, play a Madness deck. Like,
oh, yeah, Madness is funny.
Turn the discard into value, like...
Exactly. That's the lesson to learn here, is that Magic is about call and response. Like I said, it's, thrust and parry. So introducing new players to these type of effects shows them that it's call and response. You can respond to the response.
Yeah, definitely. This is kind of where you start getting the stack involved, but this kind of transitions to our next category here.
Yeah.
We're out of the first day. We're now into the first week or two. Things can get tricky here.
Yeah.
We have edicts, bounces, paired with trample. That's a whole, and protection even. Like a really complex rule system.
Yeah.
And then mill. Mill is another one that first week or two you should introduce someone to.
Yeah. I mean, so edicts are, those effects where it's like, okay, I'm going to play this Fleshbag Marauder. I sack a creature, but I sacked my Fleshbag. You just sacked your really valuable 10-mana creature that I waited for you to play. It's like, oh, it's the only thing on the board. All right. So I just answered your 10-mana creature with my 3-mana creature. That's kind of actually why I built Tergrid, is because there's a glut of those type of creatures in Magic. So yeah, these type of effects exist. And that's why I built a Tergrid deck, to try to utilize them. And then I threw in discard. She cares about either discard or sacrifice, so why not both?
Yeah, the other thing about edicts, though, like why it's kind of a week 2 sort of thing, is the decks that typically run it are often Reanimator decks. It's a strategy that a lot of new players are interested in, but it might be either too expensive or, too complicated for new players to actually fully get into yet.
Yeah, it requires a little bit of more nuance. Like, wait, why would I want to intentionally throw my creatures into the graveyard? Don't I want to play them?
No.
I'm like, yes. But, yes, you do want to play them, but not for that price.
Yeah.
So this spell will get it back for cheaper if it's in your graveyard.
Which is what you want.
Which is what you want. So this is why this is, day one type of effect. There's a little more nuance to this. And then you get into effects like mill. This is very format dependent because we just don't see proactive mill against your opponents that much in Commander because it's just not that viable to try and hit 300 cards worth of stuff. Yeah, the only time you really see mill.
Yeah, it's mostly self-mill in Commander.
Is self-mill, which is a totally different strategy in my opinion. However, you do see it float in and out of standard and modern, depending on what those formats are doing. And you also see it a lot in like casual play groups, oftentimes as like maybe a newer player's first alternate win condition.
Moving away from there, we go to the complexities of bounces paired with things like protection and trample. The reason why you don't see this early on, or shouldn't introduce a new player to it early on, is because it has weird interactions with the rules that often aren't explained to new players. Dave has a good example of a protection story.
Yeah, this was back when I was still playing Modern. Somebody had their very, 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 very large Mana Gorger Hydra, and it was going to kill me. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm not going to worry about destroying the Mana Gorger Hydra because I have this creature with protection from green. And it's like, I'll just block it, and it won't be that big of a deal. Well, it turns out that Trample doesn't care about dealing damage, it cares about assigning damage. That little misunderstanding in the rules cost me that game.
Yeah. And this is the thing. Removal can be used offensively, and this is kind of where bounce paired with trample comes in. I'm a Simic deck. I'm rocking the trample creature. I'm rocking the bounce spell in hand. You go to block. I bounce your creature. I get the win now. And it's game over.
Yeah.
This is why it's a week 2 sort of finisher.
Exactly. And then once you get out of those type of effects, you get to the stuff that tends to be a little bit more commander-centric, which is why you don't necessarily want to introduce these effects to new players unless they're playing Commander.
Yeah.
And that things like cant effects, stuff like Aethersworn Canonist or Silence, where just like, you can't do this. These are usually often white effects, but say Hull Breacher before it was banned.
Tax effects.
Or Narset, where you can't draw extra cards. Those type of effects where it stops you from being able to do something you otherwise would have been able to do. Those show up in Commander fairly regularly, so it's like, okay, look, I'm going to play this thing that says you can't do this, but normally you can. But these cards exist, so those are good things to introduce new players to if they're playing Commander.
Probably within the first month.
Exactly.
Don't do it too early on. It leads to feel bads, which is why we actually did a whole video on stacks, but they're included in this category.
Yeah.
The other thing is land destruction. Single target, mass land destruction. And this can come in different forms.
Yeah, this is a very contentious topic within Commander, so it's a topic that requires a lot of nuance.
It is.
The thing you want to do is you want to show new players that mass land destruction is pretty well frowned upon for certain reasons, because a new Magic player not knowing any better might decide that the best way to deal with me playing a Tatyova deck or Chris playing an Omnath deck where we're just dumping out a ton of lands and getting a ton of value is like, all right, well, I'm going to blow up all the lands. Well, if they don't realize that, okay, doing that and not having a win condition is a big social faux pas in Commander, they might do it and then not realize why everybody's pissed at them.
And it's just as bad with mass land bounce or even freeze effects like Vorinclex Voice of Hunger. It slows down the game. It kind of stops people from doing what they want to do.
Exactly.
And now you just have this grind fest where one player has a huge advantage and everyone else has to slowly play the lands back.
Yeah, and people want to get shorter games of Commander, not longer.
I mean, I'm weird. I like slightly longer games, but we're talking...
I don't mind them if they're long, but there's a certain point where it's like you hit diminishing returns. It's like, oh, fuck, can we just get on with this game? I want to play the next game.
Yeah, exactly. An hour and a half is fine.
Yeah.
But anyways, I digress.
For me, it's about an hour. After about an hour, I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
So you have the land destruction thing, but then you have single target land removal, which is more in the line of just single target removal. And stuff like that is okay because there are some very powerful effects on lands. And again, everything is about call and response, effect, answer.
Malekith Molten Pinnacle, Field of the Dead, and there's
Maze of Ith, Gaia's Krail.
Reliquary Tower.
Even just Reliquary Tower. Yeah, there's some really great effects on lands. It's important that if you do introduce a new player to Commander specifically, separate the two instances of land destruction. Mass land destruction, single target. Because one, very frowned upon, people hate it. The other, very essential because it could be the difference between you winning and losing a game.
Yeah, like I said, like Valakut Multimythical and Field of the Dead are very common win cons in landfall decks. So having a new player understand that Valakut is going to cause a lot of damage to everyone at the table when someone casts Scape Shift.
Exactly.
You need to teach them early.
Yes. Yeah, these effects are very important to give new players, but they're more format dependent. I think the other important thing to do is like figure out what the end goal of where this new player is going to end up. If they're going to end up in your EDH pods, then definitely come in at a commander focus. But if you guys are just playing, 60 card casual, whatever, then a lot of this stuff isn't as relevant because it may show up, it may not, and it depends entirely upon your personal play group.
Oh, definitely. Before we go, I'd just like to thank Power Stone.
God damn it, Chris, will you knock it off?
Power Stone. Power Stone. Power Stone.
Fuck off, dude. I'm not editing all that shit.
Alright, fine, I'll stop. I'm Chris, Archmage Eternal.
And I'm Dave, Guru of S'mores. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Power Stone. And thanks for watching.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, Dave, what's going on, buddy?
Who's a good commander to get your blood drawn from?
Oh my god, I don't know who.
Valentine, Dean of the Vein.
Oh, yeah, the prick.
He is a prick.